Oh my goodness. Ilhan Omar started to feel pressure. Another five people plead guilty in massive fraud in Minnesota case. This is getting more interesting. Let's watch these clips and we will come back for commentaries.
Right now. Just kind of talk us through your day since this morning and what has happened there at the courthouse.
Yeah, this is federal court in Minneapolis, where the other hearings and trials that I've covered for the Feeding Our Future related prosecutions have occurred. Today there were three appearances on a total of seven people that were included on the same indictment, an indictment about 2 years ago that put seven people in a group. Because the way that they prosecute a lot of the Feeding Our Future cases is they're doing them in groups of people, and as you'll recall, I think I'll have to do the math again today as part of the story, but it was more than 70 people indicted in total. There were two different trials that I covered with prosecutions. They have lumped people together that are sort of connected. So there was a group of seven indicted together. Three appeared today. Four will appear on Friday. Of the three today, one did not accept a plea agreement from the prosecution. It was offered, it had expired today when the hearing started, confirmed that they were not taking the plea deal. Two others, though, a husband and wife, did take a plea deal, agreeing to plead guilty to a single count of wire fraud each. The four that are appearing on Friday, you would guess that they're getting sort of the same plea deal. The sentencing dates are not set yet at this point, but still would carry likely several years in federal prison, plus restitution. The amounts we heard today were over $1 million each.
So you heard that, and we'll have to wait and see how many years they get. Wire fraud is punishable up to 20 years of federal prison, according to the law. On top of that, they have to pay back the money, which they should, every penny. Not just because they stole from taxpayers, but because they stole from a program that was meant for kids to be able to have meals. These individuals didn't think about how their actions could affect those kids in the future. Now, because of this, the level of scrutiny, these programs, who are legit programs, will be even harder when it comes to them being able to operate, ensuring that this doesn't happen again, right? And so I want to get into the follow-up, then the Omar clip. But first, let's get into the follow-up where one of the family members, for some reason, believes he's innocent, even though he was involved with the whole family that took the plea deals. But he said, I'm going to go to trial. I'm innocent. Check it out.
It continues to ripple through federal court, but the list of defendants actually headed to trial is getting smaller. While many involved in the $250 million scheme are now admitting guilt to avoid a trial, one man is digging in his heels. Fox 9's Rob Olsen has the details on the latest courtroom showdown and the guilty pleas that just came down.
Gandhi Yusuf Muhammad declined to comment, leaving federal court in Minneapolis Wednesday, just minutes after a hearing in which he also declined to take a plea deal for his alleged role in the massive Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, even as others indicted along with him are taking the same deal. To date, nearly 80 people have been indicted as part of the Feeding Our Future investigation, totaling $250 million in fraud. 1 year ago, Amy Bach, the Feeding Our Future founder and described by prosecutors as ringleader of the scheme, was found guilty after a 6-week trial. She is still awaiting sentencing. But during her...
I was grading papers late one evening when my phone buzzed with a news alert that made me pause mid-sentence. Immigration raids intensify in Minnesota's 5th District. But here's what caught my attention. It wasn't the raids themselves. It was the silence that followed. Complete, deafening silence from Ilhan Omar's office for almost 12 hours. You see, when I've studied political collapses throughout history, there's always a moment. A single moment when the facade cracks and reality floods in. For Alcibiades, it was when Athens finally questioned his loyalty. For those barbarian generals in Rome, it was when they had to choose between their birth tribes and the empire that elevated them. For Ilhan Omar, that moment arrived at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in Minneapolis. What nobody saw coming was how quickly her carefully constructed political identity would unravel once the deportations started affecting her core constituency. But I saw it coming, not because I'm prophetic, but because I've watched this exact pattern play out for over 2,000 years of recorded history. Let me take you back to September, when Omar was still riding high on progressive credentials, still positioning herself as the unshakable defender of her Somali community. She held town halls, gave fiery speeches about immigration rights, promised her constituents that she would stand between them and any enforcement action. The progressive media loved her. The activist groups rallied behind her. She seemed untouchable. But here's what I learned from farming. You can promise to protect your crops from drought all you want, but when the rain stops falling, your promises don't water the fields. Reality doesn't negotiate with ideology. The first wave of deportations hit Omar's district in early November. Not the dramatic raids you see in movies, quiet, systematic enforcement targeting individuals with outstanding deportation orders. About 200 people in the first week. Omar's response was predictable. Press conferences, angry statements, demands for investigations. Then came week 2, another 300 individuals. Week 3 brought 500 more. By December, the numbers were staggering. Over 2,000 people from her district facing deportation proceedings, and suddenly, Omar wasn't just making speeches anymore. She was watching her political base literally disappear before her eyes. Here's where the pattern gets interesting, and this is what most political analysts missed completely. Omar had built her entire career on representing one specific ethnic community. When I say entire career, I mean everything. Her fundraising, her messaging, her policy positions, her political identity. She wasn't Congresswoman Omar who happened to represent some Somali Americans. She was the Somali American Congresswoman. That works beautifully when your community is stable, growing, politically engaged. It becomes a nightmare when significant portions of that community are no longer legally eligible to remain in the country. I watch this unfold with the fascination of someone who's seen similar patterns in ancient Athens. When Pericles built his power base among the demos, the common people, he was unbeatable, as long as the demos remained politically relevant. But when plague and war decimated Athens' population, suddenly his entire political strategy collapsed. The people he represented were gone.
If this is your first time here, I'm glad you have found this channel. Don't forget to like and click the notification bell. And as always, credit goes to the original creator of the video clips used in this episode. And for disclaimer purposes, these videos are for educational commentaries and is not meant to aid or discriminate anyone. Let's watch more videos.
In on Ilhan Omar. No, it's not just the accusations that she married her own brother. A perfect storm of menacing developments, many of her own making, is threatening to remove Omar from power once and for all. Stick with me to the very end of this video because we're about to see what happens when a public figure who thought she was beyond reproach, that she could do or say anything with impunity, gets hit hard with reality, and that pride becomes the occasion for her own downfall. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, enjoying yet another wonderful day in the glorious golden age that you made possible back on November the 5th. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe. The politically correct woke sentiments of the legacy media were absolutely shocked when President Trump openly declared the other day that Ilhan Omar should be thrown out of the country for possibly marrying her own brother and for her repulsively anti-American rhetoric.
People coming into our country telling us what to do.
When you talk about
Talking about like Somalia, where you have a congressman goes around telling everybody about our Constitution. Yet she supposedly came into our country by marrying her brother. Well, if that's true, she shouldn't be a congressman, and we should throw her the hell out of our country.
Now, what a lot of people didn't recognize here is that Trump timed that message, that call for Omar's deportation absolutely perfectly. Trump is a master politician. Nigel Farage, right, the next prime minister of Britain, he said that he has never met anyone with the political intuition of a Donald Trump. Again, the guy is an absolute master. And what we have to understand is that this call to deport Omar is a perfect demonstration of that political mastery because, as Victor Davis Hanson has been arguing, Trump's comments are but the latest in a chain reaction triggered by Omar's online comments about the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk. And it's that chain reaction that represents the single most dangerous moment of Ilhan Omar's political career. So what are we talking about here? Well, let's go back to that horrific day, September 10th, 2025. Charlie Kirk, 31 years old, founder of Turning Point USA, one of the most influential conservative voices in America, is gunned down in cold blood while doing what a woke coward like Ilhan Omar would never do, speaking to students in a hostile environment on a college campus at Utah Valley University. So Charlie gets gunned down. The nation was obviously shocked. The country mourned. Leaders from both parties offered condolences. But Ilhan Omar, you might remember, she had a quite different response.
I just think it was the video where it called him Dr. Frankenstein and said his monster shot him through the neck. I mean, obviously this is a person, and looking at this is someone who was a husband and a father, and in the days after his shocking death,
But in this next clip, she puts her foot in her mouth and accidentally exposes the entire scam for why Somalis picked to live in Minneapolis.
But I want most Minnesotans to know this. Majority of us Somalis who are here, as my friend Ali said yesterday, most of us, this was not the first place we came when we came to the United States. But most of us chose Minnesota as our home because Minnesota is special to us. Minnesotans are special to us. When we moved from Arlington, Virginia and came here nearly 30 years ago, none of us decided to move to another state. My siblings and I and my dad, until he died, called Minnesota home. Because, like I said, Minnesota is special. And I know almost every single elected Somali Minnesotan did not start out in Minnesota, but chose to come here, stay here, start families here.
So instead of the Somali diaspora living sparsely across the United States, where they would be forced to integrate and assimilate into American society, they chose to congregate in Minneapolis so they could create an enclave that acts as a satellite state for the nation of Somalia, where they can amass political power and elect representatives like Ilhan Omar, who will do exactly what she admitted in the first clip: work from within the United States system for the betterment of Somalia, where they could engage in the same backward cultural behavior of corruption and piracy that led to Somalia being a failed state, and use their political leverage as a voting bloc to force local and state politicians to turn a blind eye to their massive fraud. In the last video I made, they have the police chief apologizing to the Somali community if they feel targeted by these fraud investigations, all while having a Somali translator. In the video I made before that, the mayor of Minneapolis is giving whole speeches in Somali. They have successfully weaponized white liberal guilt to force the acquiescence of their mission to benefit Somalia by any means necessary. So now if you want to win elections in Minneapolis or Minnesota, you need the Somali vote. And in order to get the Somali vote, you must vow to prioritize the interests of Somalia. Otherwise, they'll just install one of their own, like Ilhan Omar, who will do it. The latest mayoral race in Minneapolis was decided by leveraging a Somali clan war back in Somalia to split up the Somali vote in Minneapolis. You can't make this stuff up. Somali clan wars are deciding who the mayor of Minneapolis is. I truly believe in the exceptionalism of America. And because of that, I do believe that immigrants on an individual basis can integrate well into America, even from places like Somalia, but only if they're willing to completely repudiate the culture and customs from where they came and fully assimilate into the American way of life. They must be willing to become American at their core. But when 100,000 congregate into one city with the explicit intent on not assimilating and being encouraged not to assimilate by woke liberals who think that it's racist, we can't be surprised when the exact same things that made Somalia unlivable start happening here. It's the same problem with Dearborn, Michigan. You can't flee from a radical Islamic Sharia country and then set one up here in the heart of America.
Her own hands and step it up a notch, and chooses to go on CNN of all networks to basically lie on camera and her way through one of the weakest cop-outs to theft, fraud, and the abuse of stealing the great people of Minnesota's money just so she could send it all back to Al-Shabaab. Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves, because what I'm about to reveal could shake the very foundations of Congress. Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from Minnesota, is in fact in deep trouble. And so you see, this new complaint has dropped. And let me tell you, folks, it's not just about fraud. It's about a web of deceit, a paper trail of sorts, and that paper trail that leads straight to funding terrorism, absolute treason and sedition, which, as we all know, should be punishable by death. But here's the kicker. While the Democrats and the mainstream media scream about Trump, They're absolutely silent on this, as per the usual, trying to sweep it under the rug as to not draw too much attention to her confession, her admittance of committing crimes, fraud, her scams, and all her wrongdoings. And we all know why, right? It's their standard playbook because it exposes their hypocrisy, their double standards, and their agenda to make America less than great again. But I have it all here for you, put together in a nice little and complete package. Because as you all know, once you upload, publish, and hit post online, well, the internet is forever. As always, like the video and subscribe to my channel. But let's start with this crazy clip of Ilhan Omar saying the most insane thing yet as she sits down there on CNN's stage panel and attempts to poorly explain to CNN's news anchor and host Jake Tapper about where all the missing money has gone, why they took it, how she hates President Trump, the asylum seekers and refugees plot to continue their relentless campaign scheme to make America less than great again, and what happens next. Watch.
Can you shed any light on why the fraud got so out of control in Minnesota?
I think what happened is that, you know, when you have these kind of new programs that are designed to help people, you're oftentimes relying on third parties to be able to facilitate. And I just think that a lot of the COVID programs that were set up, they were set up so quickly that a lot of the guardrails did not get created.
We already know millions meant for children disappeared. What started as charity turned into one of the biggest fraud scandals in U.S. history. Claimed meals that were never served, and government paid them over and over again instead of helping kids. The investigator says the money was used for luxury cars, personal business. This is where it gets even more real. Just days ago, multiple people pleaded guilty. They admitted to stealing the money meant for children's meal. They claimed to feed kids but instead inflated number. Also used money for personal expenses. I want to hear your thoughts on comment section respectfully. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in my next video.